Okay, picture this. You're a French colonial official in Hanoi. The year is 1902. You are trying to build this pristine, gorgeous modern city. There's just one tiny, crawling, squeaking problem. Rats. We're talking a literal tidal wave of rats. What happens next is honestly one of the most spectacularly disastrous and frankly, hilarious policy decisions in human history. Let's get right into it because today in this explainer, we are looking at how massive institutions spectacularly fail just because of their own hubris, and how human nature is always going to find a way to hack a poorly designed system.
So the French authorities were absolutely terrified of the bubonic plague, right? Which, fair enough. So they hatch what they think is an absolutely brilliant plan. They want to trigger some local entrepreneurialism. They offer a cash bounty, 1 single cent for every dead rat. But, and this is crucial, they definitely didn't want a massive mountain of rotting rat corpses stinking up their nice clean municipal offices. So they added a catch. To get your cash, you just had to hand over the severed tail. What could possibly go wrong, right? It's literally a video game quest. Mission: kill rats. Reward: 1 cent.
Well, human nature took over, as it always does. The locals looked at this bounty and basically discovered an infinite money glitch in real life. They came up with a genuinely brilliant, utterly devastating business plan. Step 1, catch a rat. Step 2, cut off its tail. Step 3, and this is the absolute kicker, let it go. I mean, why kill the golden goose? Or, the bald-butted rat in this case. You just let it scurry right back into the sewers so it can breed, making more rats, which have more tails, which means infinite money. It's genius. Obviously, it didn't take long for the French inspectors to notice a highly disturbing trend. Suddenly, there are all these totally healthy, completely tailless rats just happily scurrying all over the city. But the real breaking point, that happened when health inspectors ventured to the outskirts of Hanoi and found literal rat farms. Seriously, tail creation factories where rats were being deliberately bred exclusively for their tails. The French officials were absolutely furious, completely defeated by the exact entrepreneurial spirit they tried to encourage, and they immediately canceled the bounty. Let's step back for a second here, because this wild story perfectly illustrates a core concept in economics known as a perverse incentive. Simply put, it's an incentive structure that accidentally makes the exact problem you are trying to fix significantly worse. It is literally like trying to put out a fire, but accidentally grabbing a bucket of gasoline instead of water. Humans are incredibly efficient creatures. We are always going to take the easiest path to the reward, completely ignoring whatever noble, high-minded intention the rulemaker originally had. And that brings us directly to a famous idea called Goodhart's Law. The law basically says, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Just the sheer existence of a target makes people optimize their behavior to game the system. Imagine you're rewarding a call center worker with a bonus based purely on the sheer volume of calls they finish. What do you think happens? They just start hanging up on crying customers halfway through the call just to hit their quota. The metric looks absolutely fantastic on paper, but actual customer satisfaction completely plummets. The absolutely crucial point here is the massive disconnect between the plan and the reality. The plan is always well-intentioned, right? Like, hey, let's drain the swamp. But the reality of human behavior turns it into, hey, if they're paying us to clear the swamp, let's just breed more alligators for cash. It's a hilarious but kind of dark reality of policymaking, which brings us to the ultimate, most famous historical namesake for this entire phenomenon. Enter the British Raj in India and the infamous Cobra Effect. So the story goes that in the 1870s, the British government in Delhi was absolutely terrified of venomous cobras. So they offered a cash bounty for dead snakes. Now, just like those rats in Hanoi, locals supposedly realized they could just breed cobras for cash. The British found out through a massive fit, canceled the bounty, and the breeders just dumped their now useless barrels of snakes right onto the streets. The wild cobra population absolutely exploded, making it way worse than before they started. In economics, this is treated as the ultimate historical facepalm. But hold on, because here is the mind-blowing climax. A recent investigation by the Friends of Snake Society proved that this entire snake breeding story literally never happened. No way, right? But they checked the colonial records. Way back in 1887, investigators looked into these exact rumors and concluded that breeding cobras in confinement was, quote, highly improbable and has never been documented. Now, the British did actually cancel a snake bounty in 1873, but that was purely because it was getting too expensive, not because of fraudulent underground snake farmers. I mean, we really have to lean into the massive irony here. The real Cobra Effect isn't even about snakes at all. The myth was that clever locals bred snakes to scam the British, but the actual reality? A 19th century colonial rumor, totally rooted in racist stereotypes about quote-unquote cunning locals, was swallowed hook, line, and sinker by modern academia. An economist in 2001 literally named a whole entire economic theory after a piece of fake colonial news without ever bothering to check the historical sources. You really cannot make this stuff up. But, hey, before we laugh too hard at gullible 19th century officials or totally embarrassed modern economists, let's look at our current reality, because this exact same flawed human instinct is currently ruining the modern world, specifically the world of academic science. The exact same blueprint for disaster that we literally just talked about is playing out right now in universities globally. You've probably heard of it. It's known as publish or perish. Today, a researcher's entire livelihood, their tenure, their promotions, their ability to literally feed their families relies heavily on one highly specific metric: publishing papers in top-tier journals. Now, the goal of this incentive was noble, right? Promote high-quality research. But remember Goodhart's law? When that publication metric became the absolute target for survival, scientists were effectively forced to become modern-day snake breeders just to keep their jobs. So how exactly do academics game the system? Well, they have found absurdly creative ways to churn out sheer volume over quality. We are seeing a massive rise in predatory journals that will publish absolute nonsense just as long as you pay them a fee. We see citation cartels where researchers secretly agree to constantly cite each other's work to artificially boost their metrics, and my absolute personal favorite, salami slicing. That's when you take one perfectly good, solid piece of research and you literally slice it into tiny, useless, minimal chunks just to get 5 paper credits instead of 1. This just brilliantly illustrates the horrific real-world impact of perverse incentives. The goal here was to foster a healthy, impactful scientific ecosystem. But the reality? We are mass-producing dead cobras. Just a massive, endless flood of low-quality, meaningless academic papers. And this is causing a severe drop in actual scientific quality. It is wasting millions of dollars in research grants, causing massive burnout, and honestly, worst of all, it is heavily eroding public trust in legitimate science. The big takeaway here is that whenever we try to measure human progress with a single, rigid metric, human nature is always going to find a way to hack it, optimize it, and completely break it. Which leaves us with a pretty critical question. Whether we are managing a city's rat problem, funding scientific breakthroughs, or just running a boring corporate office, are we actually fixing the system, or are we just figuring out how to breed more snakes? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.